I do like being right. Ask my ex-husband.
Happens every time. X. There's a reason it's X, huh?
Welcome back to the Boris Dirk podcast. Max's roommate is watching something in the other room, but background noise is not a problem. We have double checked. We've got 2 nights of playoff hoops to talk about, but I feels more like 1.3 nights of playoff hoops. What series do you want to start with?
Let's start with the Lakers from yesterday because they just in entirely predictable fashion, as I said they would if Ja missed a game. They played against an undermanned Grizzlies team. They came into the game clearly with the attitude of we don't have to play that hard to win this game. And lo and behold, they were immediately down 10 to 15 points. It seemed like every time the Grizzlies hit a shot, they were surprised, which they probably shouldn't be because the Grizzlies run extremely deep. Tyus Jones, very good player. Desmond Bane, really good. Xavier Tillman was awesome.
Career night, 10 for 13
Yeah.
from the field, doing a lot of things for them on defense. 32 minutes played. I did not expect him to have 20 points in a playoff game this year. He had 22. Yeah, series tied.
John Conchar,
Yeah.
2 huge blocks. Blocked AD on a dunk, and then I think blocked him from behind and another look in the post. So
D'Lo, okay,
yeah,
you know what? Here's what I want to say about this. D'Lo
Yeah.
does not belong on the floor. I didn't think it was this bad because, to be honest, I didn't watch a ton of the Wolves last year until the end of the season, and he made some shots in their one series last year, and even this season, obviously the whole thing was like he's having his best shooting year ever, and the Wolves still want nothing to do with him. He just is. He's this version of D'Lo is soft. There was a clip going around of him not closing out on a Kennard three. Just very simple things. And it feels like this Lakers team has a few really tough defenders. And D'Lo, it's like having a guy who kills the spacing on your offense. Like he is a destructive defensive player. And when he's not hitting threes, it's hard to find a reason to put him on the floor. I don't know why Darvin Ham is still playing him so much.
Yeah, I mean the problem yesterday is that at least in the play-in game when D'Lo was bad, Schroeder had a really big night. The problem was yesterday, Schroeder was also bad. So what were they going to do? Throw Troy Brown back out there? The roster's better than it was before. But what I'll never understand is why they didn't just trade for Conley. They could have just done a one-way deal with
I mean,
Utah.
Conley should have been Russ. The Russ trade should have been Conley, and they would have been able to give up a lot less.
Conley, Vanderbilt, and Beasley. It would have been the same thing.
Beasley is the guy that I think basketball nerds are still scratching their heads. Why isn't Beasley playing more? Sometimes I feel like, we are naive to think the intra team dynamics. I don't know what Beasley looks like in practice. I don't know if guys like playing with him. But when Beasley's on the floor, he hits shots. And it doesn't quite make sense to me that he only played 13 minutes last night. They do need shooting. And obviously he has a little bit of size. I know he's not a great defender. But yeah, and Schroeder obviously gave them a weak 16 minutes, but still it was only 16 minutes. And D'Lo shot 2 for 11. He played 30 minutes, and a couple of his makes, I guess I say a couple, his 2 makes were sort of wild. How did those go in shots? He was all over the place. He doesn't look comfortable offensively, especially when LeBron is so ball dominant when he's on the floor. Like D'Lo wants to set up actions himself. The fit just looks really bad to me.
Yeah, he just doesn't look engaged. He had a couple really bad plays in the first half. Ham took him out, kept him at the scorer's table, but clearly just took him out to tell him to, not be a dumbass. And he goes back in and immediately blows a defensive assignment and turns it over and gives up a 4-point play. And it was like, did you take nothing from what your coach was just saying to you?
Yeah.
Also in this series, when Ja's playing, Jared Vanderbilt is very useful because he's a great defender on Ja and he can help clog up the middle. But when you don't need him to like take away their primary offensive option, he does really clog up their spacing offensively. Like there were a lot of possessions where AD or LeBron was going against 2 or 3 bodies in the post because they were just kind of ignoring Vanderbilt. So, and Rui has been very good for them in this series. Honestly, he's been probably the best of their deadline acquisitions in the playoffs so far. So I'd be curious to see if they adjust at all. I mean, if Ja's back, it makes
I'm
sense
giving that to Vanderbilt. I think
yeah.
I think Vanderbilt has been the best guy they got at the deadline. I love him.
I mean, in the playoffs, not since they got him. I mean, in the playoffs.
But even still, like Vanderbilt is playing with a playoff edge. Like I just like the things he does. He's rebounding hard. He's closing out. Like, he is a winning player, and it's hard to maintain that playoff edge when D'Lo's on the floor because there are these really discouraging defensive possessions where like AD and Vanderbilt are working their tails off, and Reeves is staying in front of Bane, and then the whole possession is blown by D'Lo's lack of effort or lack of awareness off the ball.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because we all know like even this age LeBron can be impactful defensively when he really needs to be. And like this is just a really good defensive team. Didn't they have like the best defense in the league since the All-Star break or something like that?
Yeah.
They obviously have a really high defensive ceiling, and D'Lo needs to be off the floor for them to reach that ceiling.
Yeah.
And Schroeder has been up and down the last couple of years defensively, but it definitely feels like he's had some moments in the last couple of weeks for them. And I would rather ride Schroeder and see if he, can find a rhythm because I think that Schroeder's fit is more seamless than is.
Yeah. I mean, they need one of their point guards to show up, which hopefully at home for their sake, they'll be able to get a little bit better performance out of those guys. And yeah, I mean, in the second half, they only allowed about 40 points. So the defense in the second half wasn't really the problem.
Yeah.
There was just kind of a stretch in the first half where they really let go of the rope. I mean, just to give a little bit of love to Memphis too, and a little bit of love to Taylor Jenkins, like the way they play without Ja, there's just so much motion in the offense. They had 16 assists in the first half yesterday, and just completely smothered the Lakers as well between Brooks and Tillman and Jaren Jackson. They put together a great game plan.
Yeah, don't look at Jaren's box score. His counting stats don't quite communicate like how much he dominated this game defensively. Jenkins kept him in for 40 minutes because he was, oh my God, like Jared Vanderbilt's a big man. I think he's 6'9". He's got broad shoulders, and when he's next to Jaren Jackson, he just gets swallowed in the post. And there were moments where I started to wonder if Jaren's actually 7 feet tall. Like he looked massive. His length, his quickness, his defensive range is ridiculous. And he was 5 for 12 tonight. He was the impact was much greater than those counting stats would suggest.
Yeah. Both he and AD sort of shut the other down offensively somewhat, but like they both had great defensive games. AD had a atrocious offensive game, but on defense, I think he had 7 blocks. And he had a few blocks that were 5 blocks. Okay, but he maybe had
7
2 steals
would have been
or something.
He's not Walker Kessler.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yeah,
even offensively, Jaren had some crazy drives. Like when the Lakers were cutting that lead to single digits, and it looked like, they were going to get back in the game and just win with the talent deficit offensively. Jaren had some gut punch. Like he does these long stride drives where he kind of in slow motion extends, and he can finish with either hand. He's so comfortable with the left. Sometimes he's really a weapon for them. When I think that his offensive package is limited, he shows me a little bit more than I realize is there.
Agreed. Yeah. Overall, I'd say I think the Lakers have more like things to try as the series goes on. Like, and if AD even has a, average for him offensive game yesterday, they may very well win that one. So and I expect once they go home that they'll get a little bit of a boost from that as well, and maybe some of their role players will show up a little bit more.
You
But
can't
I
you
mean,
can't expect 20 from Hoochie Mama, you know?
yeah,
He obviously will come back down to earth even if he continues to hit shots.
yeah,
But yeah, I expect better from AD. He was so locked in defensively. Hope,
yeah,
needs to stay active on offense.
yeah. It remains an interesting series. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. And I don't hate Dylan Brooks for the LeBron comments. I think it's fun. I think there's a WWE side to the playoffs, and if that's what Dylan Brooks thinks is going to give him the best chance to stop LeBron, sure, we'll find out. He said he likes poking bears. I do agree with him that, like LeBron had 28, 12, and 3, but like
Hmm.
he did fade in and out of the game.
Yeah, he
And
called for a sub, which I don't think I'd ever seen before. He
yeah,
like,
and it didn't feel like, the when LeBron has 28 and 12, like you assume he was controlling tempo and mo-
mhm.
and scoring important buckets for the Lakers. It was a quiet 28, and I
Yeah,
think Brooks did do a really good job on him.
yeah, I'd agree. I'd like to see a little bit more LeBron in the post in
Yeah,
the next game. I felt like they got good looks whenever they did that. But yeah, I'd probably have the Lakers in game three, but it'll be a good one.
for sure.
Hmm.
Okay. Let's just move on to tonight, right? Because
Sure.
Uh,
I'd
Denver,
remain.
Denver took care of business, and the Giannis-less Bucks did their job. Even the series at one. So let's go to the.
Yeah,
There are some great series that continue tonight. So yeah.
absolutely.
Do you want to talk Nets Sixers at all?
I have a quick thing on Net Sixers. Sure.
Let's do it.
Um, so for Net Sixers, I think most likely Brooklyn threw kind of their biggest punch today. I would expect it to end in a sweep.
Yeah.
But Philly was up 3-0 on Toronto last year, and they sort of squeaked out a close game three to go up 3-0, and then took their foot off the gas, lost two straight before
Mhm.
Embiid got hurt in game six, and then that kind of doomed their whole whatever chance they had at a playoff run. So if you're a Philly fan, you got to hope they learn from that. Finish it in four. Embiid already had about 5 injury scares today where he landed on his back. Not to mention when he
Yeah.
kicked Nick Claxton right next to the nuts. So it wasn't a flagrant two. It was only a flagrant one. Per
Yeah.
Monty McCutcheon. Um, but I mean, he fell on his back. He was holding that. He was holding his ankle. He was sort of, you're on borrowed time when you're in the playoffs with Embiid. Just like
Yeah.
the intensity of the game, just the amount of times that he falls. So as much rest and time off between series you can get as possible is good, and then as many games as you can avoid playing, also good because Atlanta doesn't have a chance against Boston. They're getting swept.
Yeah.
Um, so you have to try to do the same and get as much of a rest advantage you can. Even Harden got a little banged up today, so all they have to do is finish it in four. Like this Brooklyn team is an under 500 team since they made their trades. They have some nice pieces. McHale's great. Cam Johnson's great. But just finish it off. If Philly can't finish them off in four, certainly
Yeah.
not in five, then they're just completely not a serious team.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree. Weird that Trae Young shot 33% from three this year. And like my first thought when you said the Celtics are sweeping them is like, you can't say that because any team can get hot now and steal a game in a series. Uh, but like the Trae like hitting 7 threes type of game just feels like it doesn't happen anymore. He's not the volume 3-point shooter he was at least a year ago. Maybe it's a confidence thing and he'll get it back next year. But yeah,
Yeah.
that looks like it has to be a sweep. And
Hmm.
I agree. I agree with you on this Philly series. It's weird that Embiid is so physically majestic and smooth, and also it looks so laborious, and he looks tired, and it looks like he honestly has some body fat that he could shave, and probably his lower body would thank him. But the whole Embiid package this year has been like such a blessing to watch. And
Yes.
and
Yes. No
I
doubt.
and I think Daryl Morey, I don't think Scott Foster was on this game, but modern load management is Daryl Morey paying a ref to kick out James Harden for no apparent reason. I think I'm gonna
Tony
title this.
Brothers.
I'm gonna title this episode "Modern Load Management Equals Ejection," because
Yes.
if I were a Sixers fan, I'd also, Harden is the other load to be managed, and
Yes.
I kind of like that the Sixers were able to get a win and his minutes were cut short.
Yeah. That was a wild ejection. I think it was Tony Brothers was the ref today, who was just voted best ref in the league by the players.
By who? Tony Brothers?
By the brothers.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was good. Harden got
Who's
himself a
the
little bit
guy
of a
who said
rest.
Tony? Who's the player who came out publicly and said Tony Brothers shouldn't have a job?
Dinwiddie.
Okay, it's been a rough month. It's been a rough year for Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I
McCall
think he said
Bridges continues to look like a star in the making. So there are
mhm,
things to be positive about as a Nets fan. I think the Nets and the Suns did well in that trade because I think Cam Johnson's an awesome player who probably can do more than he's been asked to do to this point in his career. I think he still has room for growth with his size. He can be a good defender, and he's only scratched the surface on that end. And Bridges, yeah, I think he's the type of guy that they bought at the perfect time. He was a distressed asset after Luka demolished him in that series last year, and
yeah.
so there are reasons to be optimistic. But yeah, still sucks. You had KD and Kyrie, and you got nothing.
Yeah. But I mean, even
No big wins is what I meant.
no. But yeah, I mean, they got 4 firsts in that trade and however many swaps, and then also value wise, I mean, Bridges at this point is probably worth 3 firsts.
Yeah,
If you were, and Cam Johnson's at least 1, maybe 2, or like 1 and a protected
yeah.
one or something.
Bridges is like
Um,
1 DeJounte plus 1 first.
yeah, you could get a first for Dorian Finney-Smith. Like they if they want to go that way this
Yeah,
offseason, they could recoup a lot of the assets that they lost in the Harden trade and you know the other moves they made to put their super team together.
yeah,
Yeah, but that's all I have to say about Philly Brooklyn. Just finish it off and give me a good series in round 2 where Embiid's healthy because we haven't really gotten one of those ever.
yeah. And I still have no faith in Philly because I think James Harden is not. I don't think he's a guy that you want to bet on past the first round of the playoffs at this stage. There was a version of Rockets Harden who really could carry your team far, basically as far as you can go. But it's this version of Harden that I no longer have faith in, and he's been proving me wrong this whole year, and he might prove me wrong in the playoffs. But I hold my position. All right. Let's see, which leads us to Clippers Suns.
Just
There's
got
nothing to
Kawhi back
say.
in game 4.
You talked about borrowed time. Max today texted me, Kawhi, my lover, Kawhi, my friend, and it stung. I really, we were all. I think if you love basketball, you were praying for a vintage Kawhi playoffs. Just one more for the
Yep.
Bucks. Cork it and put it up on the shelf. Vintage
We got 2
Kawhi
of them.
2023.
Games.
Put it next to the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like if this knee sprain is in fact a knee sprain, that he will either be hampered or done. And that is really sad. This was a 5-point game tonight. The Suns won game 3 by 5 points, but it was not that close. It felt like the Suns were winning the whole way through. There was that hump that the Clippers couldn't quite get over, that like 8 or 9 point hump. And yeah, I there's just no path to victory for the Clippers without Kawhi and Paul George. And I don't think
Yeah,
any more necessary analysis.
I know. You have to assume. I personally assume he'll be back in game 4. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw him walking into the arena. It wasn't like he was heavily limping. There was like kind of a trace of a limp. Apparently, he sprained it in game 1 and played through it in game 2. And then I guess it was bad enough that he sat game 3.
Yeah.
He was still
Allegedly.
great. He was still the best player on the court in game 2.
Yeah, and sort of like Embiid, like a physical outlier, and still you're wincing a little bit. Like it's clear that Kawhi, I mean, Kawhi hasn't been himself, and he's not athletically what he once was. He doesn't have that same explosion, but he's so crafty and so like efficient with his movement. Like probably the most physically efficient guy I've ever watched play, with his high release and like the way he gets into things so quickly, and doesn't dance like a lot of gifted offensive players tend to do these days in isolation. But yeah, it's really sad because he, even without the bounce he once had, he is still so good at 100%, or 100% of what he is at 32 or whatever he is now. So
Yeah. And if he doesn't come back and they just, I mean, I guess this isn't really a discussion until we know a little bit more, but if he doesn't come back and they just bow out in the first round with Paul George and Kawhi on the sidelines again, like,
yeah,
what the hell do you do with this team?
I feel like he's been limping for a couple years now.
He was
And
limping up the stairs on the planes that Toronto was taking
yeah,
in the finals when they were in the finals.
exactly. Like he's been a little bit imbalanced
Yeah.
for a couple of years now, and he's still been able to play at an elite level for a lot of that time.
Yeah.
So it's really sad, and yeah, I hope he gets better. I think even if he does get better, like the Clippers just didn't have enough firepower in this series without PG. I will say, like, Russ was really good in this game.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that Russ was this good, continues to play good basketball. And so kudos to him for making me look like an idiot. Like he was a good guy. He was a good get for them. And I
Yeah.
really didn't expect to ever say that. And
Hmm.
Norm was really good. He got me thinking about the Blazers. I was in my feels tonight. My dad and I were screaming at each other in the living room, like happily screaming about how sad it is, how our the Blazers are the laughing stock of the league, and how the Blazers are the only team that says, yeah, we got to trade this guy so he doesn't walk for nothing. And then we lose half a season of that guy and we trade him for nothing. It's like I would have taken half a season of heart and then
Yeah.
just let him walk somewhere else. We said, we don't want half the season. We'll take Kevin Knox.
Yeah. And a first.
Or Reddish. Yeah. And so that's been really rough. But yeah, just sorry, I needed to vent for a second. Quick tangent.
That's fine.
Let's go to Kings Warriors. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Zoom
Main
says
event.
we have 6.5 minutes. Let's try to do it within that time.
We can do it.
So I just want to say one of the few pleasures of being a Blazers fan the last couple of years, even as an Anthony Simons hater, is seeing the way that Dame's expertise has rubbed off on Anthony. Like Anthony doing Dame type things, like just like right to left pull-ups that remind me of Dame, floaters that remind me of mature Dame. And I see a lot of that with Poole and Steph. Poole wasn't even that relevant, and I think a lot of people are really down on Poole right now. But
Hmm.
Poole has some really Steffi moments, and I just think it's cool when backcourt mates, like really great vets, rub off on young guys like that. Outside of that, that was a weird place to start, but I that's where my mind was. Outside of that, I'm glad. Obviously, this isn't a 3-0 series. I want my pick to be right. I'm not emotionally invested in this Kings renaissance, so
Yeah.
I want the Warriors to win this series. And Kuminga was a huge boost. I think that's one of the takeaways tonight. Kuminga was flying around. It feels like his closing speed, like when his launch to bucket speed is so crazy. Like he'll cut and catch the ball, and it feels like in a millisecond he's at the rim. Uh,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think there's a place for him in the playoffs. And I just read somewhere that the Dubs young guys are feeling sort of excluded from the party, and they're mad at their lack of playing time. Kuminga tonight earned himself some minutes. I'll be surprised if he isn't playing more as this series goes on, because they needed his
Yeah.
energy. Yeah. Take
Yeah.
it
I
from
mean,
here.
yeah, I mean, Sacramento is such like a fast and active team, and the Warriors in general are an
Yeah.
older team that just getting a little bit more of that kind of, just fast twitch athleticism out on the court is helpful, I think, in this series, much like when they play Memphis. Yeah. tonight, another installation in Steph's now sort of overflowing resume of great playoff performances.
Okay, wait a second. Wait a second. I know they were sort of playing for their lives, but the Steph haters are going to come for you
Oh,
because
really?
I'm putting on the Steph hater hat. But Max, it's a first round series, and wouldn't it have been a disaster if they went down 3-0? He was just this is who he's supposed to be.
Well, avoiding disaster is still greatness, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's just like a reminder, I guess, that
Yeah.
he's still him, as
No,
they
I'm
say.
with you. I'm with you. He was ridiculous tonight.
Yeah.
Huge Moses Moody minutes. Also, we're
Hmm.
talking to young guys. He hit a couple big shots, and like we're in the playoffs now. Like any buckets you can get from guys that are sort of on the outskirts of your rotation are big buckets. And Moody was impressive, and obviously 20 boards from Looney. I think we were like all basketball nerds are huge Kevon Looney fans.
Yeah,
420 and 9. It's just a great Draymond-ish
exactly. That's my first
book.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 420 and 9. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Moody's a 16 game player because he was pretty bad for the whole regular season. But I thought last year in the playoffs he showed some flashes, and then
Yeah.
in these playoffs he's shown flashes as well. Yeah, DiVincenzo, another sort of Draymond-ish line of 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
and 4 steals as well. So yeah, I likewise happy this series is still going. Like 3-0, it would obviously be over. And there's nothing, honestly, I think one of the more fun playoff scenarios is a 2-1 series where the home team for game 4 just absolutely has to have it.
Yeah.
So that game 4 is going to be, I think, a hopefully a classic.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
I think DiVincenzo, someone needs to overpay for that man. I'm telling you, go get DiVincenzo. Trade too much for Dante DiVincenzo and play him in crunch time. Your team will thank me. And yeah, for Moody to get 13 points in 16 minutes, it was a huge lift for them tonight. Poole should not be starting for this team. I think he's best served off the bench, and we saw that tonight. He was pressing a little bit when his shot wasn't falling. Wiggins is a guy who's I feel like his counting stats don't really express just how valuable he is. He was great defensively tonight, and 27 and 3. It was a loud 27 and 3. And
mhm.
I don't know. The note I want to leave on is just that Looney got 4 points and 20 rebounds on 420. And that might not be important to our whole fan base, but someone out there is listening to this podcast right now feeling like God exists because of Kevon Looney.
Made California proud.
Any closing statements? Because we have less than a minute.
No, I just Knicks in 5, baby.
Oh, that made me scared for my friend's well-being.